I do feel like, starving your way to success is a thing that works in certain businesses at large, right? Like reducing headcount, which is a thing we've been seeing a lot of, unfortunately. So there is a thing about like trying to get lean, but I don't feel like that really works in the email marketing space so much because it is a high ROI channel. So the more you invest, the better you do, just because of the ROI dynamics that are in place.
Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours.
Welcome back, everybody, to our two parts. This is our second half of our discussion with Chad White today, and we are looking to diving right back in. So let's do it. All of these things go back to what we were talking about before, which is just how are we trying to interpret and report on what actually influences ROI from the email channel. So, okay, let's say it's too hard. We've all decided it's too hard to measure. It's too inflated or it's too underreported. What metric could or should take its place? Like revenue per email, engagement rate, subscriber lifetime value, like what could be the second place or what should be considered next instead of ROI maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think ROI is still useful. I think you could also apply ROI like more strategically, right? Like you could apply it to certain like programs. You could like try to determine the ROI of, an automated series or what have you. Like you could shrink down that calculation. I think that's super useful. I think ROI as a whole is still very useful, but you're absolutely right. There's things that inflate it, there's things that deflate it. I think on net, it's probably in the email marketing space deflated. I think it's higher than people give it credit for. So I mean that's my personal view, but I think it's pretty backed up with good data. But in terms of other metrics, I am absolutely a huge fan and see a very necessary transition away from channel metrics to customer metrics. So I do like things like lifetime value, whether it's subscriber lifetime value or customer lifetime value. I think that's inevitable that's where we're headed. One of the things that I like to say is that companies like to think that their job is to manage channels, and that's not their job. And some companies, like retailers, like to think that it's their job to like manage inventory or manage products, and that's not your job either. Your job is to manage your customers. Like that is the core asset of your business is your customers. And so you let your customers guide you in all of those decisions. It's not 1960. You don't like just buy products and then try to like find people to buy the products. Like that's not how it works anymore, right? You attract customers and then you have customers and you let them guide the evolution of your business. But we haven't caught up to that line of thinking with our metrics. And part of it is that it's hard, for sure. I feel like, customer data platforms or whatever kind of data centralization tool you have for customers, that's really foundational to making a lot of these calculations. Because today, without it, I think it's quite challenging to do. But I think CDPs are undeniably like a foundational, tool that like in 5 years, every enterprise is going to have a CDP. And I know that those rollouts haven't always been super smooth for a variety of reasons, many of which are not necessarily the technology's fault. But that's certainly like a little bit of a challenging space. But the necessity for that data is key. It's key to really doing, omni-channel orchestration in a meaningful way. And it's key to having analytics and KPIs that are customer-centric. And I see those as like those three things as being absolutely 100% non-negotiable for the future of enterprises. You have to have those three things. You have to have centralized customer data. You have to have way better insights stronger insight engines that are actually keyed to customers, and you need to have much better orchestration that puts the customer activity at the heart of it. So I see those as being absolutely fundamental. So yes, I like customer lifetime value as a great aspirational type metric. Again, hard to do. I think you can get a little bit comfortable with like slightly fuzzy numbers, right? And like paying attention to deltas. When you have fuzzy calculations, paying attention to deltas is really important. How is that fuzzy number changing from quarter to quarter or year to year? That actually is almost like more important than the actual number. And the same thing, we see that in like marketing metrics as well, right? We know those numbers are not super precise, but the delta, so long as like the algorithms haven't changed, the delta is telling. That's I think the most important, most useful bit of data is how those numbers change over time.
I think it's fair to say on behalf of Danielle and myself, we concur. I want to revisit something from earlier in the conversation, when we were kind of laughing about, those brands that are bragging about email ROIs of 80 to 1 or even 100 to 1. And again, in your recent article, you basically said when you see numbers like that, it's a big red flag. But, how are those numbers getting calculated? Do you think it's possible that, there's at least some marketers out there that just aren't considering total cost of ownership when they're doing these calculations?
I think that might be part of it. They're probably also taking credit for like sales that like maybe they really didn't have like the front end. Yeah. I think the biggest brag I've seen is like, I think it was like 120 to 1 was like the biggest brag. And I remember thinking like, this poor brand, like this is such a missed opportunity. Like, and people think like, it's nice to have a good ROI. You want to have a good ROI, but the point I was making in my article is that margins aren't everything, really. Like that's not what people want. Yes, they want strong margins, but if you could be a $1 million company with 50% margins, or a $10 million company with 25% margins, I think you would want to be the latter because that's way more profit. Like, so the absolute numbers are, and not the rates, are what's actually important. And that's my issue with brands that have, whether it's accurate or not, the ones that have or proclaim to have really high ROIs, it's a sign to me that they are ignoring tons of other opportunities that, yes, would bring that ROI down, but would increase the overall profitability and revenue generation of their program. And that's ultimately that's what our clients care about, right? They care about, are we generating more revenue and more profits? And like the rates are important, but the rates are like secondary, right? I'd rather have the more money than the higher rates. Like that's how all of our clients.
That's crazy.
So like I think that's where we get lost. Like this is ROI is a rate, right? And it's very similar to margin. And like that's generally not the goal, anybody's goal in business. Their goal is usually higher revenue and higher, profits, absolute values, not these rates. Again, rates are important, but that's generally not the goal. So that's when I see those kinds of brags. I think like, you're just ignoring all kinds of opportunities that would give you a 60 to 1 return, or a 40 to 1 return, or a 20 to 1 return. Like there are lots and lots of activities that those brands are clearly ignoring because they think it's beneath them. And all of those activities would make their program stronger financially and for their customers.
And I guess maybe a simple question, not, of course, nothing can be so simple, but what have you seen happen when marketers actually fail to demonstrate email ROI to the wider business?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's not a surprise that like in recent years, I mean, businesses have like kind of been through the ringers, lots of ups and downs, from the pandemic times to high inflation, to certainly the current concerns about tariffs. Yeah. So I mean, it's been, I think, a pretty rough like roller coaster of like the last 5 years. And so I think there is a lot of pressure on marketers to like to in many cases to prove out. Again, I think there's still a lot of brands that are like, oh, your email, you're fine. You keep doing what you're doing. But I do think that there's a lot of instances where marketers are challenged to like put a number to this. And again, I think this is a good exercise to do. I think that it is challenging, especially if they are using like restrictive math, right? Or not look or like that they just don't have like the best data to like prove things out, especially when looking at like email's influence across other channels, or again, depending on what your business model is, like being able to connect that email activity to the end business goals. Again, like a CPG company, with engagement is like, that's definitely I think it's among the most challenging to connect those dots. And it gets soft for sure. But I think, when you're talking about like brand influence and brand image, like it's sort of naturally kind of softish. So yeah, so it definitely can get challenging. And if you can't satisfactorily kind of prove things out, yeah, you can be, on the block for budget cuts, which it seems like we've actually kind of been seeing lately, is budgets from email getting cut a bit in ways that, I mean, to my eyes, don't make a lot of sense.
So I think we're probably clear that there's maybe no, magic wand to be waved when it comes to boosting email ROI. There is work and strategy to be done, but, there's almost certainly some quick wins to be had. And, Danielle and I were talking because one of our favorite pieces of research is actually by one of your Oracle colleagues. And they were explaining how the use of Snooze functionality, one of our pet topics, can reduce unsubscribes by as much as 80%. And, you just think that, being able to move the needle on your list churn like that, it's going to have a phenomenal impact on ROI, isn't it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's amazing, like things like that can have like a pretty outsized effect. I think I think so much attention at email marketing is given to campaigns, and and frightfully little attention is given to sign up processes and preference pages and unsubscribe processes. There's I think huge opportunities across the board. Like hardly anybody is like A/B testing their sign up forms or seasonally optimizing their sign up appeal. I think there's tons of opportunities there. And then the opportunity with things like Snooze. Really, if you give folks almost any other choice besides unsubscribing, you retain like a magical, like, yeah, you don't want to talk about like unicorn magic. Like if you give people another choice besides just unsubscribing, you save a lot of people. Allowing them to opt down on the frequency saves a ton of people. Allowing them to snooze for a month or for 2 weeks or whatever it is saves a magical number of people. Yeah, there's all kinds of fantastic
Chad,
opportunities
if we
there.
don't send them emails every day, ROI it's
Oh,
just going down.
yeah, I know. Nobody wants to send fewer emails to folks, but like that's the wrong. I feel like they look at it like, oh, if I send fewer versus sending a lot, like, oh, that's like, I don't like that delta, but that's the wrong delta to be paying attention to. The delta to pay attention to is a few emails versus none, right? So versus people opting out and then you don't have that ability to contact them at all. And also in the future, they may they opt back up, or obviously you can do it without driving people to want to opt down. You can take that, you can pay attention to inactivity and on your own decide, hey, this is a person who's not very engaged right now. Let's send them fewer emails. Let's not fatigue them out. Let's not frustrate them to the point where they unsubscribe, and then if we see more activity, or when we see more activity in the future, now they're back in the market. Now we can ramp up that volume again. So like, there's lots of different ways to look at it, but you're totally right, Danielle. It's sending fewer emails is probably still one of the toughest sells, unfortunately.
I know, I sigh before that comes up in almost every one of my calls, and I'm almost like, um, I I'm gonna just talk about open rates again for a second, even though I feel like I daren't, but Litmus research also shows the companies with the highest average open email or email open rates, whatever accuracy may or may not be applied to those rates, are more likely to dedicate over 15% of their marketing budget to email marketing compared to those with lower open rates. And the same goes for click through rates. So higher rates get bigger budgets. But what should come first? Strong performance or a high budget?
Yeah. Talk about the chicken and the egg. Yeah, I do think that in general, my answer is higher budget. We talked a little bit about how email marketing, unfortunately, is getting a little more complicated because of things like MPP and other changes that inbox providers are making. But to boil it down even more, I honestly just don't know of any email marketing program that starved their way to success. This is a high ROI channel, and so you invest your way to success. Like that's how it works. I do feel like starving your way to success is a thing that works in certain businesses at large, right? Like reducing headcount, which is a thing we've been seeing a lot of, unfortunately. So there is a thing about like trying to get lean, but I don't feel like that really works in the email marketing space so much because it is a high ROI channel. So the more you invest, the better you do, just because of the ROI dynamics that are in place.
Manjaro for email. You heard it here first. I want to, we touched a few moments ago on the topic of why so many brands are moving to prioritize paid channels, and almost feels a bit counterintuitive, especially when all the data says that, email gets the better results. And do you think it's just that it's easier to go the paid route than having to handle all of sort of many emails, many new developments and challenges and staying on top of them?
I do think that's a lot of what's going on because paying for additional, ads on Facebook or what have you is really easy. That is like the easy button. Even though, as much as we've talked about email marketing metrics being a little floofy and fuzzy, I think everybody knows that like the metrics you're getting out of these, these walled gardens, I think is also proven to not be very reliable. So I would definitely put that out there that like that the returns you think you might be getting based on what Facebook is telling you or, is probably like also not very real. But I do think that email marketing is getting harder, and email marketing is not taught in universities. It is is a talent that is learned through blood, sweat, and tears. And so there isn't like infinite talent, and there's not like a ton of talent that's coming in. So I mean, if you have marketing skills, I think that's a fantastic place to be, because those skills are incredibly valuable. But I do feel that there is like this counter movement where like I think people recognize that email marketing is getting more challenging and it has just a tremendous amount of nuance, which I like increasingly illuminate in my books. The first edition of email marketing rules I think was like 120 pages or something like that, and the fourth edition over the 2 volumes is like 700 pages. So I mean, there's a lot going on. It is a difficult, challenging channel with lots and lots of nuance and lots of like different ways to think about it. And buying another ad is certainly really, really easy to do. So I think that's a big part of what's going on. And there's this counter movement of like wishing it was easier. So like I like routinely see articles about like, emails should only be text only. Like the text only people who are like always advocating for that. And I think part of it is like, they think that they can trick people into thinking if it's text only that it's like from a person and it feels more personal. I feel like that is very, very wishful thinking. I think especially as generative AI becomes used more and more, I think that illusion will quickly dissolve. But also there's the simple fact that in most cases, HTML emails like dramatically outperform text-based emails. There's certainly a place for text-based emails, but there's this wishful thinking like, email rendering is so hard. You know what's not hard? Writing text and putting text in an email. But that's not the more successful route in the vast majority of cases. But there's definitely like a throwback wish, like, remember how email marketing used to be? But there's no going back. There's only forward. So, but yeah, it's definitely getting harder, and there's tons of nuance. And I think that's a big part. I think everybody wants an easy button, and there's not really an easy button for email marketing.
Thanks to that for my job, I guess. I'm glad to be able to have jobs. Now, speaking of nuance, we've talked about B2B senders on the podcast before. And of course, we work with many B2B senders at Validity. And while there's a lot of overlap in terms of best practices between B2B and B2C in email marketing, ROI measurement and attribution is not necessarily one of those things, which you mentioned, which we talked about at the top. So B2B senders don't always have a direct email revenue attribution option. So what's the next best way for them to prove ROI and get that C-level attention?
Yeah, so I talk about those 4 different kinds of businesses: the email programs, revenue focus, lead focus, engagement focus, and retention focus. It's I think B2B companies, I think, also can span those, right? Because there's tons of SaaS B2B companies. Oracle was partially one. A big chunk of our revenue comes from SaaS, and so you need to use the appropriate lens, retention KPIs, to develop that ROI. But then, on the acquisition side of the business, where we have tons of salespeople here at Oracle, so there's a lead focus. So you're talking about, okay, how is email marketing or other digital marketing contributing to that lead progression? You can prove out, so folks who receive these nurture campaigns or engage with these nurture campaigns, they become opportunities faster, right? Or they convert from marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead faster. It accelerates that pipeline. You got to put numerical value on that. If I can close 2 weeks sooner, what's the value of that? Because there is value in that. So you have to start applying dollar values to the things that email marketing can do for you by again accelerating pipeline, or creating opportunities that close at a higher rate, whatever it is. You just have to do a bit of legwork to find out all right, what is it worth to us when X happens and when Y happens, faster or more easily, that allows our salespeople to transition to the next opportunity or whatever it might be. You can put values on these. So yes, I do think that it is harder for that reason, because you have to do these exercises to kind of do some mapping and put some value on things. But then there's also, in some cases, some B2B brands that are very revenue focused and very sort of transactional, right? If you're, certain kinds of medical equipment or medical supplies, if you are selling certain kinds of, maybe not farm equipment, because that's very capital, but certain kinds of farm needs, that are very consumable, those probably also are very revenue focused, right? Where the email campaigns allow people to buy those things. So I think it's about doing the proper mapping to understand, hey, all right, how does my business work? How the different parts of our business work? And then, what are the KPIs that oversee those areas? And then do the appropriate mapping. Again, ROI is not easy to do because of all this nuance. It's not one formula that allows you to really calculate it. But if you do that kind of breaking down, again, it can get you close-ish, which is great. I'm a huge fan of close-ish. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Don't let great be the enemy of good.
That's right, exactly. But I think that we get very, very focused nowadays on it's got to be, it's got to be very precise. It's got to be super precise. Right? We're precision, we're a precision engine, we're a precision business, like, but I think that's like, it's forcing unrealistic expectations on the reality of how these numbers work, how your customers work, how your business really works. There's definitely good enough metrics for sure.
This has been such an outstanding conversation. And speaking personally, I'd love to carry on for another hour. And I think there's plenty more that we could touch on. But we're going to have to start wrapping things up. And that means we're going to throw a closing quickfire question at you as well. And kind of related to sort of today and metrics. And if we give you the power to ban one marketing buzzword forever, what's getting the boot?
Oh, I think growth hacking. I would love to get rid of that word. I feel like a lot of the hacks are like very gray mail, like in our space. Like they're often questionable. So that's one I would like to get rid of. And I feel like it also sets like the wrong expectations. Like it makes it sound like quick and easy. And I feel like that's not how investments in email marketing work, right? They're incremental, progressive investments and like improving programs.
That is not what I was expecting. I love that. I'm so happy with that. Thank you so much, Chad. This has been awesome. And for all of our listeners, be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more resources to help you become a stronger sender.
Absolutely. And just a quick word, we love our great guests. And hey, if any of you that are listening today want to be a future great guest, let us know. You can drop a comment, ping us on LinkedIn, fill out the guest form that's linked to the show notes. We'd love to see you guys some stage in the future. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now. Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.